You know, the 2026-27 Premier League season hasn't even kicked off yet, but it has already well and truly etched its name into the history books. We are standing on the precipice of a completely unprecedented era in English football. We aren't just looking at a few minor tactical tweaks or the usual summer transfer drama here. We are witnessing a literal managerial earthquake. Today, we're going to break down the sheer scale of this chaos, what it means for the tactical landscape of the league, and ultimately figure out whether this massive changing of the guard will actually translate to success on the pitch.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our tactical blueprint for today. First, a record-breaking reset. Second, the managerial merry-go-round. Third, the end of the golden era. Fourth, the new manager bounce. And finally, does firing managers actually work?
Section 1. A record-breaking reset. To truly understand the gravity of this upcoming season, we really have to appreciate the staggering volume of turnover we're seeing right across the division. 9. That is the magic or perhaps the totally chaotic number for this season. 9 different clubs, literally almost half of the entire Premier League, are set to begin their opening weekend campaigns with a brand new permanent manager. And look, this isn't just a few relegation-threatened clubs hitting the panic button. This wave of change has swept right through the very top of the table, engulfing the heavyweights and the newly promoted sides alike.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how wild that number really is. This season's 9 managerial changes completely shatter previous opening weekend records. Our previous high watermark was set back in the 2016-17 season when 8 clubs started fresh. You might remember that summer. It's the one that brought Pep Guardiola to Manchester City and Antonio Conte to Chelsea. Before that, you have to go all the way back to the 1995-96 season, which saw 7 clubs change managers. The volatility is escalating fast, and the landscape is shifting quicker than ever before.
Section 2. The managerial merry-go-round.
Let's zoom in and look exactly at who is coming and going in this historic reshuffle. It's an absolute dizzying web of names and a real domino effect. At Liverpool, Arne Slot is out, and Andoni Areola is in. That move alone caused a massive ripple effect, leading Bournemouth to replace Areola with Marco Rose. Over at Manchester City, the unthinkable finally happened. Pep Guardiola stepped down after his unbelievable, trophy-laden spell, making way for Enzo Maresca. Chelsea, they opted for Xabi Alonso after Liam Rosignor's really brief stint. And the list just goes on. Nottingham Forest bringing in Oliver Glasner, who in turn left Crystal Palace for Pierre Sage to take over. Fulham appointed Alvaro Arbeloa, Ipswich brought in Gary O'Neill, and Newcastle is fully expected to appoint Matthias Gisela after Eddie Howe stepped down. It is a complete and total reshuffle of the deck.
What you really should take away from this is just how incredibly fleeting life in the dugout has become. The average tenure of a top-flight boss now sits at a mere 20 months. 20 months! You barely have time to unpack your bags and get your family settled before you're clearing out your desk. And this upheaval didn't just appear out of nowhere this summer. The groundwork was actually laid last season during the 2025-26 campaign, which itself featured 11 mid-season managerial changes. It's absolutely one of the most demanding jobs in world football, and patience is clearly in incredibly short supply right now.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the pure absurdity of what we now consider long-term in the Premier League. Arsenal's Mikel Arteta is now the longest-serving manager in the entire division, having been there for less than 7 years. But consider Manchester United's Michael Carrick for a second. He was appointed as the permanent manager in May of 2026, right? And yet there are only 10 managers in the entire league who have been in their jobs longer than he has. He's already a senior figure in the managerial landscape before he's even managed a single game in his first full season. That perfectly encapsulates the madness we're dealing with.
Section 3. End of the golden era.
Look, we can't talk about who is arriving without zooming out a bit to recognize the monumental, historical void left by those who have departed. For the first time since the 1985-86 season, let that sink in, England's top flight will kick off without a single one of these titans occupying a dugout. Sir Alex Ferguson, Arsene Wenger, Jose Mourinho, Jürgen Klopp, or Pep Guardiola. Between them, these 5 men have won 26 of the 34 titles in the Premier League era. They haven't just participated in the league, they absolutely monopolized it. And they did it by completely reinventing the sport from the ground up. They defined 3 decades of pure innovation in English football. Ferguson built an absolute empire on relentless standards and youth integration. Wenger revolutionized the league behind the scenes with sports science, diet, and meticulous preparation. Mourinho arrived and introduced a previously unseen level of tactical pragmatism and, frankly, psychological warfare. Klopp's heavy metal, high-intensity pressing completely reshaped the physical demands of the game. And Guardiola's positional play, it created arguably the most dominant, suffocating football the country has ever seen.
The men who wrote the modern rulebook are officially gone, and a new chapter is forced to begin.
Section 4. The new manager bounce.
So with all this change, we have to pivot to a really fascinating subplot. What actually happens on the pitch when almost everyone has a new voice screaming instructions from the touchline? We are all pretty familiar with the theory of the new manager bounce. It's that well-documented, short-term improvement a team usually enjoys right after appointing a new coach. It's driven by players having a renewed motivation to impress the new boss, slight tactical tweaks that catch opponents totally off guard, and just a general psychological reset. But the massive question for this season is, how does this concept function when half the league is experiencing that exact same psychological reset simultaneously?
Well, we are going to find out immediately because Match Week 1 has created an unbelievable tactical bottleneck. We have 3 opening fixtures, Fulham versus Chelsea, Manchester City versus Bournemouth, and Liverpool traveling up to Newcastle, where both teams on the pitch are led by new managers. You have entire squads trying to adapt to new tactical ideas and new coaching methods at the exact same time against opponents doing the exact same thing. It is a recipe for absolute tactical chaos.
And to show you just how incredibly deep this turnover runs, just look at Andoni Iraola's start at Liverpool. It's honestly bizarre. His first 6 Premier League matches in charge of the Reds will all come against teams who are also under new permanent managers. They face Forest, Ipswich, Fulham, Bournemouth, Manchester City, and Newcastle. Areola literally won't face a settled managerial counterpart until October.
Section 5. Does firing managers work?
So the crucial point is, with clubs so eager to pull the trigger and bring in fresh blood, does all this chaos actually lead to winning? Shifting our lens from the emotion of fandom to cold, hard analytics, the research is actually quite sobering. As discussed in the Financial Times, drawing on the groundbreaking book Soccernomics, the data shows that player quality and wage spending remain far stronger predictors of long-term results than simply changing your manager. Sports consultancy groups argue that coaches often succeed or fail based primarily on the environment and the squad they inherit, rather than just their own individual tactical genius.
And we have incredibly recent evidence to back this up too. Changing managers offers 0 guarantees. Just look at the 2025-26 season. Nottingham Forest went through 3 different managers during the campaign. Tottenham changed their head coach twice. Chelsea altered their direction entirely before the season even ended. Yet, despite swapping out coaches left and right, all of these clubs continue to struggle to meet their objectives. The problems usually run much, much deeper than the person standing in the technical area.
Even when that fabled new manager bounce does happen, it can be a total illusion. Take Liam Rosenier's recent spell at Chelsea. When he arrived, there was an immediate, undeniable uplift. He collected a massive 2.6 points per game early on. But the bounce was entirely fleeting. The initial motivation wore off, the underlying squad issues remained completely unsolved, and Chelsea won just 1 of his final 8 Premier League matches before he was dismissed to make way for Xabi Alonso.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the ultimate prize, winning the actual league. Achieving instant success is incredibly rare. Since the Premier League began in 1992, only 6 managers have ever won the title in their debut season with a club. Mourinho did it, followed by Ancelotti, Pellegrini, Ranieri, and that absolute miracle Leicester season, Conte, and most recently Arne Slot at Liverpool. It's a super exclusive club, proving that overhauling a team's tactical identity and winning immediately is absolutely the exception, not the rule.
Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought as we head into this wildly unpredictable 2026-27 season. We have 9 clubs hitting the reset button, absolutely desperate for a spark. But if the analysts are right and underlying player quality and financial spending are the true dictators of success, how much does the manager in the dugout actually matter? Is this historic managerial earthquake going to genuinely shift the balance of power, or is it just a massive reshuffling of the deck chairs? It's a fascinating question, and watching it all unfold on the pitch is exactly why we love this game. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and we'll see you next time.